Thank you everyone for joining us. Our program doesn't start for another 20 minutes or so here with the main part, but we like to start as we have with a little bit of kind of checking in with familiar faces. Any new folks that are here and want to kind of pipe up, now's a great opportunity to kind of like raise your hand and introduce yourself, whether on camera or in the chat. But this is San Diego Media Pros. If this is your first time joining us, I'm the vice president of the organization, Robin Martin. I manage a video production team at UC San Diego. We are very busy these days with all of the remote and online content production for keeping everybody learning safely, remotely. And it's a fun, diverse crew there that I get to work with on campus. And then I'm very happy to serve a leadership role here on the board and welcome you all to our meetings. We've been doing meetings over Zoom for coming up on a year. Probably it'll be in April or May when we hit that landmark. So if we don't have anybody that wants to hop in and introduce themselves, we are going to start to queue up our news segment. So every month, Mark Mazanov on our team here goes and scours the internet, the telegrams, the newspapers for production-related news that might be out there for a segment that we like to call News You Can Use. And so, Mark, if you are ready, we are going to toss it right over to you.
All right, we will give it our very, very best at this. I could go into all the long stories of all the technical issues I've had at my home, but suffice it to say that I'm very happy to be here at Patrick Espinosa's fabulous office doing things. So bear with me as I switch over to do a couple things so that we can get into our news you can use. So here's our news you can use, ladies and gentlemen. And for many of you, you may have seen something called the Super Bowl this past month. And if you had, it was a bit underwhelming, but one of the neat things about it were the cameras that were there and all of the coverage of this wonderful yearly event. It was the 21st time that CBS had produced the Super Bowl, and 20 years ago, they had 30 cameras to cover the action. This year, there were 120 cameras covering the action. They also used some 4K and 8K cameras that serviced their augmented reality graphics. Quite an amazing package. They had a trolley cam. You may have noticed it. It ran the length of the stadium, one side or the other. It could go up to 65 miles per hour to give a fan's view. They developed a 53-foot movie bird crane on the upper decks that they also used with their augmented reality encoding. You may have seen that when they had the large graphics. And they did something that has caused a little bit of questioning in the community with some cinematographic feel. They had on-field coverage with a Sony Venice camera for the shallow depths of field, mostly towards the end zones. Now, if you saw the game, did you like the look? You can answer in our quick poll. We've got a little poll that we want to show up. Did you like the look? Did you not like the look? Or do you have any idea what the heck I'm talking about? So we can answer that. We'll get to the answers here in just a minute. But I wanted to see what the folks saw, if they have any idea what that maybe looked like. If you follow sports, you might not. You maybe didn't. And here are just some basic numbers if you're interested in this kind of stuff. As we talked about, all the cameras, 32 cameras in the end zone, pylons, 350 plus record playback channels, the sky cams, the trolley cams, and 12 cameras with 4K and 8K capabilities. So it was quite impressive, the coverage. The game, not so much. And let me tell you, how about that halftime? Huh? Halftime. It was not the halftime we wanted to see. And I don't know if we should really blame the Weeknd and his jockstrap wearing friends. I don't know if that's something we would want to do, but that's really not the halftime we're talking about. The halftime I'm talking about is the fact that LA production has the lowest in 25 years, the lowest number of days, nearly half of last year's days. They filmed the Film LA group that serves LA's official film office. It was 48% compared to 2019. There were 18,993 shoot days this year, as opposed to in 2019, 36,540. Feature films decreased the most at 55.8% compared to the 40.2% drop for commercials and 38.3% drop for television. So it was not a good year, obviously, and statistically almost half of the amount of work, which would lead you to believe that the future of production looks cloudy. And it does, but not in the way you might think. just within the last week or so, Frame.io introduces the camera to the cloud solution. Quite impressive. I encourage you to go look this up, and there'll be a link here in a minute. It is the easiest and most secure and fast way to get your footage from the shoot to your collaborators, to your production folks, to your clients, anywhere in the world. It's instant H.264 proxy uploads to Frame.io, allowing for near real-time shot reviews and edits, colorization, whatever you want to do with the footage. It can be done over an LTE connection, 5G and or Wi-Fi, so you have options no matter where you are. It uses key partners, including Teradek Sound Devices and Colorfront, to be able to drive all of this, which is really, really fascinating, the partnerships that they have. And it integrates into the workflow for Premiere Pro and Final Cut, as well as DaVinci Resolve and Avid, and also does so with After Effects. And you can do live streaming of the shots for those who are not on set. So it's quite a powerful package. It's basic. You obviously take the signal that gets sent, the audio and the video, the proxies are created, uploaded via LTE or Wi-Fi, and then your clients and editorial can then instantly take a look at the footage and work with it, do it. They can comment on it. They can see it in almost real time, eliminating the need to have everybody on set. Or if you have a tight turnaround, it's a wonderful tool. Or if you need to get started right away for a project and you want to get it back and not wait a day or two to get back into the office, this is a wonderful thing. It's something to look at. I encourage you to visit the Frame.io website here on the site. And I believe that Jeff has this also up on our website, and you'll be able to look at this in a link as well to take a look at the technical guide explaining a little bit more about what this does. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to see where kind of this cloudy future is going for production. In the game show, Let's Make a Deal, Monty Hall, and now Wayne Brady, gives you an option to look behind one door for a surprise or not so much of a surprise. But here, you get a peek behind three doors as we're taking a look at the burgeoning world of video, virtual video production. And we're going to start behind door number 1, Solo Cinebot. Now, this is developed by a couple of LA-based industry veterans. It includes an all-in-one package. It's a 4K UHD camera. It records in ProRes 422, fully robotic pan-tilt zoom camera, and can reach a height of 6 feet. It has a bicolor ring light and records in 24-bit wave audio recordings, and it's all remotely done. It's delivered to your site, plugged in, and that's it. A little more information, take a look.
We believe the next era of filmmaking will be defined by creators who are united by technology, not proximity. Introducing the Solo Cinebot, a first-of-its-kind remote-controlled ultra-high-definition camera system designed to shoot anywhere, from anywhere. No setup required. Create your perfect shot with complete control over the height, pan, tilt, and zoom. Built-in studio lighting and up to 18 channels of precise audio recording. You can even talk live with your talent and team just like you're on set. It's time to rethink what's possible. The next era of filmmaking is here. Solo, production, reimagined.
So that could be one of your solutions, as long as you have enough money. It rents for $6,800 a day, about $20,400 a week. That doesn't include your shipping, your data, or your labor costs. But it is an all-in-one solution. It's kind of an interesting idea. And I encourage you, visit Solo Cinebot for a little more information on what goes on with that. Now, behind door number 2 is the AR Effects Home Studio AR Wall. This is kind of like the little brother and smaller version of Stagecraft solution that you may have seen in The Mandalorian, that idea. The size of the background is somewhat unlimited, but the screen resolution is key here. And one of the key things is that the technology is active parallax, so it keeps the camera in the background and your subject all kind of in a 3D relationship in the environment. And it leverages some Unreal Engine architecture for those who may want to know what's behind the box. And here's a little more about it. AR wall itself. That's the bigger version, and they have studios. The neat thing about this, unlike the Cinebot, is this will work with any camera and background video source. So if you projector or a large 80-inch or whatever TV or device monitor you may have, comes with a background pack, and it costs about $10,000 for the computer and a tracking puck, which is reasonable to get into corporations for an interesting look besides green screen that that you can have there. So something to look at here at from AR Effects on this website to look at this interesting home studio solution. And then behind door number 3 is the XR stages. And this is the kind of the bigger brother wraparound sort of version of what we saw here on the home studio. The 3 different sort of versions here. There's a live stage, which is 180 degrees. It's got a lighting truss built in, so you can still light your subject. There's a performance stage, 180 degrees with lighting truss and an optional top LED panel. And of course, the film stage, which wraps 270 with lighting truss and top LED panels. This gets closer to that Mandalorian idea. It also uses a lot and for virtual meetings where you can have this happen live with meetings. And here's a little bit more what that might look like. And yeah, that's pretty impressive. Not really where everyone goes, but it's out there, and the reach may be good for some of you who got your big PPP loans, because it is $25,000 to $75,000 per day. They do recommend a minimum of a 3-day studio rental. So for the big high budgets, this certainly is an interesting solution to look at. So certainly look at that, but that's the kind of thing that's out there. These have all been out there in the last 18 months or so, really getting that big push as we look at virtual productions. And finally, news is everywhere, but sometimes you find the greatest news right here in our own backyard. And in putting these together, I was doing some research. We have a Slack channel at Media Pros, and it popped up. David Rains had posted something, and I took a look, and it was fascinating. And right there on our SanDiegoMediaPros.org, there's a resources and a references tab, If you click on that, there are abundance of links to information on creating, writing, producing, music, graphics, all kinds of stuff that gives you some great instruction where we kind of cultivate all of this stuff together. In fact, what just dropped today was the easiest way to rotoscope in 2021, a little YouTube that clicks on to then goes to a 10-minute training on some new features in the Adobe product, and the imagery database for building your mood board. All the images come from movies, and you can search by number of actors, whether they're standing or sitting, fire, those types of things. So as you build your mood board, this is an interesting resource for you to look at. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is our news you can use for February 25th, 2021.
All right. Thank you very much.
Much.
All right. So who saw some technology in that rundown that you are super excited about, that you want to kind of come on camera and mention, whether it's that AR wall or those robo cameras that you sent to location? What piqued your interest there? We've got a couple minutes before we start the rest of the program for some conversation.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was curious about the quality of those screens. Now, obviously, they're a bunch of tiny little LEDs, but are they all just seamless screens? In the old days, when they were that big, they were a bunch of little LED lights. How are the panels themselves made? How fine are they?
So I know from what I've seen around, it's a combination. So sometimes it is some Sony fairly high-end panels that have a very small dot pitch that's sufficient so that you don't see the individual lights from when the camera's far away. People are also using like rear projection systems for this, so you don't necessarily have to have a whole tile of LED walls. There's a few different approaches people are taking.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and
Anybody
if I could
else?
just come in for a sec, this is the kind of technology that I am hoping that maybe we could go and visit in LA once the pandemic wraps down and we can start to get back to whatever that new normal is. This is something that's on our radar screen. And we're actually looking at holding some sort of a meeting that we can do locally with maybe an LA demonstration. But gosh, I don't know about everybody else, but I'd love to go up and see this technology in action. That'd be pretty fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I don't know if we shared the poll results. Do you want to
No, I would be
take a guess at
wonderful.
that?
What,
There we go. I just
here we
popped them
go.
up.
So the poll results, you can probably see them. 62% of you said, yes, you like the look, 29 no, and 14 no idea what we're talking about. Interesting. Wow. Because I would have bet no. I was on the no side myself. It takes you out of the event.
I didn't notice it.
But and some people didn't notice it. So that's fascinating. Wow, pretty cool. Okay. Well, it looks like CBS may have something on their hands there.
But it was probably because the Packers weren't playing.
Yeah. I got that from my nephew who refused to watch the game for that very reason.
Yeah. Anyway.
Nice. Very nice.
All right. Anything else that caught folks' eye from that new segment before we transition on?
I will mention on that news segment in the research, one of the keys behind, say, the AR wall that's probably the most reachable for us is the resolution of your imagery and the ability to handle that on what it is you're showing it on, whether it's being projected or an 80-inch screen or 100-inch screen monitor, whatever. It's the resolution that's key. So keep that in mind. That like Tom was saying, and Robin, your pitch, your dot pitch is critical, but the resolution is big. Your 6K and 8K. Obviously, the more resolution, the larger you can go on your screen to give you that effect. So that's certainly something to think about.
All right, fantastic.
With a little bit of background in the news business, I can see how that remote camera would be a big sell to the industry. Just think of the airfare that these people will save, bringing in their experts. And increasingly, we're seeing better and better video quality out of these remote feeds. So yeah, I think this is probably the next step for a lot of them.
Yeah. And some really interesting technology. I've seen some similar solutions where the ability to control the camera settings and dial in lighting and everything remotely. So not only that two-way conversation like a remote interview, but to actually have a technician that can make sure that the sound is good, that the light is good, that the camera settings are great remotely is pretty amazing. Yeah, fantastic. Well, we are coming up on 6 o'clock. We can continue the conversation and chat, but at this point, I want to bring in Jane Hare, our president, to kick us into the next section of the meeting. So Jer, without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you, Mark, for what might possibly be the best news you can use segment we've had in easily the last 12 months. I thought that was just full of fantastic information. And yes, it is all on our website so that you can reference all of the details later. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 2021 meeting of SD Media Pros. I'm Jane Hare. I'm the president of SDMP, and we're really glad that you're spending your evening with us. We are going to be talking about live streaming tonight. And in fact, what Greg Lefebvre was just talking about in terms of how quality of recording has improved is one of the things that we're going to be talking about, and just how so much of what we were doing in person has now transitioned to live stream. So stand by for that. We'll get started with that content. I just have a few announcements in the meantime. If you don't get our newsletter, please sign up via the website. It has all the details of our upcoming meetings. And I also try to share a few interesting tidbits and resources in my president's message. And one of our areas of focus for 2021 is building our board of directors. We did have some people express interest in our survey, and we are starting to talk to those people about how they might want to be involved in SD Media Pros. We're always looking for volunteers. But right now, I do want to recognize the people who are on our board right now, and they include Robin Martin, who is our vice president. Our secretary position is actually one of our openings at the moment. Bob Unger is our CFO. Jeff Trober is our webmaster. Kevin Marty is our director of membership and the one who sends out the nice emails when you renew or become a new member. David Rains is part of our technology team. Mark Masonov, as you know, does News You Can Use. Tom Kinnaman is our streaming guru and behind the scenes this evening. Rich Varvel works with us on marketing, and Michael Wood is our social media chair. But thinking about 2021, we are asking the question, how'd you do that? Because inquiring minds want to know, how did you do that? And this is a new feature that we would like to add to our meetings, hopefully starting next month. We're calling it Just a Minute, and it's a new monthly feature where we want to show your 1-minute videos with your favorite production tips and tricks. So here's what we're asking. If you'd like to participate, we want you to record a 1-minute video, any kind of content, any kind of production idea that you have, something you've learned along the way that you're an expert at and that you would like to share. You can shoot it on your mobile phone. You can use professional gear. Any level of production quality is okay, as long as it represents you and Media Pros as Media Pros. You can add a logo. You can add your contact information at the end. Graphics are fine. If you use music, it should be royalty free. And once you've got a finished video, 60 seconds, send it to membership@sdmediapros.org. And our intent is to show our Just a Minute videos at their meetings. And then we're also going to share it on social media because we know that everyone at this time is trying to increase their visibility. So along those lines, another additional feature that we're adding is something called the profiles. And this is a way for you to build your profile and visibility with other media professionals in San Diego and elsewhere. This is something we're going to send out by email to our members. We're going to send a questionnaire, and it will have some prompts that include fun topics such as what's your must-have beverage or snack on set? What's your it could happen dream? Tell us about your first movie moment, which would be an early media experience that had an impact you, like, I don't know, seeing The Sound of Music for the first time, or a moment in Star Wars that just really has driven your career. And that kind of ties into the next one, your favorite moment in a movie ever. And then what's your most pivotal career moment to date? And we've got a bunch of other questions. We're hoping that you'll fill out the questionnaire. We want very, very short answers, 10 words or less. So we don't want anyone to get stressed. This is meant to be easy. It's meant to be fun. We'd like you to submit a photo of you working, and then we're going to be publishing these on our social media weekly so that we can get to know you, so that the media community in San Diego can get to know you. And then we have a lot of people who are part of our Facebook group who are national and international. So we just want to get the word out. San Diego's here. We're here to stay, and we've got great members of this organization. So if you've got questions, when we send out the email that's got the questionnaire, we'll be able to answer those then, or you can always follow up with me or any member of the board of directors. So just a couple of things as I transition into our conversation for this week. As you know, our resources are always on the website. You'll be able to find those after the meeting tonight. And Media Pros is an educational organization. So everything that we provide in terms of information is for educational purposes. If you need legal advice, we encourage you to check with your attorney. And just a reminder that as an educational nonprofit, conversations about any kind of political issues such as AB 5 are off limits. So up next, Mark Masonov is our board member who planned this month's meeting. And I'd like to reintroduce Mark, and he will introduce the topic and our panelists. So thank you for being here, everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jane. Before I begin, I just want to touch on the fact that virtual production is really getting a lot of news play as well. And I mentioned that because an article came out recently in TV Technology that virtual production is to become an industry norm by 2026, according to experts. There was a Notre Dame report from media analyst Johanna Koljanen that video production installations will increase as the costs drop. And of course, this means the current video effects that you find in post-production are going to shift to the pre-production side, creating a new set of creative skills that are going to kind of drive that shift. And certainly the pandemic has helped accelerate some of these trends as the virtual production has become an alternative method in these times. And you can see that the news virtual production is really not a fad, it's a reality. And the gear that we saw is making it happen is extremely impressive. But more impressive are the amazing people behind the gear who make it happen and in an unconventional manner. Unfortunately, we have a number of those amazing people here with us, two for sure. And I've had the pleasure of working alongside both of these gentlemen for many years. And they are the definition of consummate professionals. And I'm not just saying that because they hire me. So please welcome Tim Flora and Dave Schutte. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I know it's take some time out of your busy evening, but thank you so much. And before we begin, I want you guys to just give a little intro to who you are, a little backdrop of that. So I know you both have been around for about 20 years in the community, and you had just met last week. So I'm sure a lot of folks maybe don't necessarily know who you guys are. So give us a little backstory on you and your company. And Tim, we're going to start with you.
Right on. Thanks for the invitation, Mark. And thanks for having me. I'm a UCSD graduate from the 90s and started working a few video jobs right after I graduated, Surfer Magazine, a little bit at NBC. And then in the late 90s, I actually started working with Mark over at Multi-Image Productions in Kearney Mesa and stayed there for about 14 years in the post-production department. I kind of handled editors and media management and building edit systems, editing. I've always been an editor, so I played that role. And then as time went on, I started going out and doing shooting, some production, directing, kind of just wearing, like a lot of people in San Diego do, all the hats. And then in 2013, I started my own company, and I'm doing the same type of work today with a lot of the same folks that I work with in Multi-Image. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. And then for you, Schutte, and before you start, I want to mention to everyone that he, like a lot of rock stars, goes by just the single name of Schutte. So I think it had to do with an overload of Daves or something. I'm not sure, but that's why we will just be calling him Schutte on today.
That's pretty awesome. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, you're correct. When I started with voice and video, there were already 3 Daves that worked there. So my condition of getting the job was to go by my last name, which I had already kind of started doing, working in film anyway. And now that I am the owner of the company, I've stuck with that. But I wanted to bring both of my business partners up here today, so I didn't have to be doing this all alone. So I've got Jim Kotick here, and we've been in business since we took over the company in 2016.
Yep.
And we've recently, Bill has owner-operator of voice and video sales, and for 6 or 7 years now.
Yep.
And we recently opened this studio space together and are in the process of merging the companies, so there'll just be one voice and video going forward.
The confusion will be gone.
Yeah, no more of that. So thanks for having us. Voice and video has been around since I think it was 1973.
70, yep.
I started back in 2007, and we started out as more of just a rental company for hotels and different audiovisual providers, and then we just evolved into doing production, and here we are now doing only virtual production. So.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you all for, again, for joining us. So we're going to start off kind of with this wide shot, this look back. March 13th happens to be my birthday. It also happens to be the date when the world went to hell. And everything kind of just stopped, ground to a halt, especially here in California. So, but before that, what was your process like? And Dave, we'll start with you guys. What was your production process like before the shutdown? What did you guys do? How did it kind of work?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, we were just cranking out live events right up until about March 6th, I would say. And then within that week, everything that we had booked just canceled, all within a week. We thought we were going to stay open, that we were going to be fine. And by the end of that week, we're like, today's the last day, we're closed. We don't know for how long. But before, it was all live events. So it was going to the venue, designing the system, bringing in the stage, the equipment. Everything was just all about the in-person experience. And that just, as you know, went away all within that week.
And I imagine live was not much of anything. Maybe you had an occasional Cat 5 drop or something, and you did something. Probably not a lot of internet at that point.
Yeah, we were doing some streaming, but not a lot, like you said. So it was a lot less pre-production at that point for us. We would get our media from the client, we would get a script, and we would execute. And it was, maybe a week of prep, maybe a day of prep. You never know.
Okay. Tim, how about you? I mean, I was there with you when all this kind of went down there at Beaver Creek, when it just rippled. And we had guys who were on the crew who had months and months of work planned that just all dropped. So what was it like, Tim? What were you doing prior to all of that? What was your process like?
Well, very similar to what Dave and the guys were just talking about. Live corporate events. We also did a lot of on-site video production and editing. So we'd go out and do interviews, and then I'd bring an editor, or I'd edit the video myself, depending on how big the show was. We'd turn stuff around. We also did a little bit of pre-produced stuff for the meetings if they wanted a certain kind of meeting open video or a little sizzle reel or something. But it was mostly done on site with, like Dave was saying, a lot less pre-production. We would do the pre-production when we got on site, and we'd all get into a meeting room ahead of time and the show and just knock it all out. But that's a whole other discussion. But we were, to go back to your story, we were just chugging right along. The beginning of 2020 was going well. And we were in Beaver Creek for like a 10-day stint. And at the beginning of the show, it was kind of like, oh, what COVID-19, whatever type of thing. And then on the very last night of the show, it was beginning to get a little more serious, and people were talking about it on stage. And I remember being backstage with Mark, and we've got a lot of freelance video, audio guys and camera guys. And it just seemed like everybody started canceling shows at the same time. Like everyone was getting text messages. And so it just went from full blast to like zero in the span of just that week. And I was actually kind of worried that I wasn't going to be able to get on a flight back to San Diego. I didn't know the extent of it and how bad it was. It's just a total surreal experience. And the next 2 to 3 months were just this whole slow motion, like what the heck is going on, and what is production going to look like, and what does virtual even mean? Because like Dave and the guys were saying, we didn't do we do an occasional Zoom call with a client, but we never wrapped our head around integrating that into just everything that we do moving forward. So it was a strange time, like it probably was for everybody.
Yeah. So on that topic then, so March 13th happens, everything gets shut down. So how did you go about redefining your process to stay afloat? Shooty, you guys, I mean, how long were you down, and how did you do this pivot to sort of come back? What was going on? What did you do? Was it you? Was it the client? What went on?
Well, there were a lot of tears, a lot of crying myself to sleep at night for about the first 2 weeks. But once we got through that, I know that Jim and I we were on webinars every day, all day. watching webinars, watching Zoom webinars, because not only did we have to think about the future of production and what we were going to do, but we also have, a lot of employees that were now out of work. We closed planning for 2 weeks, and within days we knew it was going to be longer. But the first 2 weeks were just kind of figuring it out. And at that point, we started to get inquiries and hear from clients, and how are you going to deal with this? What can we do? And that's when we started talking more and more with Bill, and he put the first studio that's in our other building. He just put the gas on that. He had to get the pipe grid in there and the lighting and a new dedicated internet line. And he got that all going within a month, and we started hosting small stuff there, single person stuff.
So would you say you guys sort of self-taught with your webinars of sort of what's going on?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what we did.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
All right. So how about you, Tim? I mean, what did you do?
Yeah. So in terms of my kind of evolution, we actually had a client that we were scheduled to do a bunch of shooting with up in San Francisco. And we were going to just we had a room all set up, and we were going to parade like 25, 30 people through over the course of 3 days. And they were all partners of a client that we had who had things to say about their product. And it was a pretty familiar, workflow for us. But that canceled. And then the client really still wanted to do something and wanted to get those messages out. And so that was kind of our moment of, okay, well, before the pandemic, we'd always just say, you don't want to do it remotely. Like, it's so much better if we just go out in person and shoot it. The quality is going to be better. There's so much more control, which I still believe is true, but we couldn't just say that indefinitely. And it just forced us to kind of think outside the box a little bit. So for us, I kind of started brainstorming of ways that we could use platforms that were familiar, like Zoom, but enable us to do recordings that were higher level and more professional than you can get just by recording over Zoom.
Let's talk about that then, because that you have a very interesting process that you do that gets a really good quality. So tell us your whole process, how you came about that, and kind of take us from A to Z about how that came about.
Okay, sure. I have some slides actually that I have prepared. And I just want to say that there's going to be a lot of information here and just, questions we can take at the end, but I just want to try to pack as much in here as I could to go over all the things that I found and kind of some gotchas. But in a nutshell, what we were able to do was devise a repeatable system. And over the course of, I don't know, maybe 5 to 6 months, we did about 25 different client records, different locations, and we did about 50 edits. So we did the pre-pro, we did the shooting, and then we did the editing. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through what we did and kind of some of the tools that we used. So our first part of it we'd have initial contact with the client. We had kind of a rehearsed video that we would show, like, okay, here's the difference between what it looks like recorded over Zoom, where you're subject to the internet and the dropouts and the 360p and all that. And then here's kind of what it looks like if you record it locally on your system. And most of these folks were kind of branched off from the client that we were supposed to record. So our client was just saying, okay, partners, you just come to this team and they're going to help you out. So it was a little bit of a sell, but not much. Then after they were on board, we would organize. I would order all the gear off Amazon, and Mark's got a list, I think, that he can share. But it was just a basic package of things, and I would unbox it and kind of put it all together in a one box friendly format so that the client didn't have to unbox like the ring light and like, do I need this cell phone holder? No, you don't. Like, and unboxing a lob is just, I found it's way more confusing doing it that way versus me just putting it together or someone putting it together nicely in a kit. and just sending it to them in one box. At the beginning, we thought, oh, we'll just devise a system in a Pelican case with a laptop and do all the things that we want, and have full control. But that solution ended up being not ideal in the end, just because people wouldn't return it on time. And then it was just more of a nightmare. So it ended up, as it evolved, that we just kept it as a kind of, they purchase a package that includes this gear, and then they just keep the gear.
Hey, Tim,
yes.
So the folks who are looking on your chat, we've posted that link that Tim sent to us, and it's an Amazon link that shows all of the gear that he ended up vetting out and purchasing for his solution. So if you want to copy and paste that, so you've got it, now's a good time to do that, unless before the chat sort of scrolls up. But go ahead and take a look at that.
And I'll show a picture as well here in a sec. So I would ship them the stuff. Then I would basically do an email and a pre-conference call before the recording. And with the pre-conference email, that's the first thing I'd send out. I would send out kind of a best practices attachment, and then an attachment of, like, wear this wardrobe type of thing, and make sure your background is free of distractions, that kind of thing. And then I would do a pre-call with them about 30 minutes, a few days before the shoot, but after they had received the gear, and go over everything. And this was super important. I didn't do these at the beginning. I would just be like, okay, let's do the recording. And some people would like have a box in the back. They're like, well, what's this? And then it was just, then you're setting up more than you're focusing on content. So on the pre-call, I would do discuss best practices. Like I said, a quiet area, what you're going to wear, about talking points. Like, are you going to do a Q&A format? Or are you going to do just something where you talk on your own, just making them feel comfortable, reminding them about eye contact and smiling and that kind of stuff. So, and then if they have any questions about the gear, I can address them. And then what we'll do is, on the record day, I normally block a 2-hour window, or I was blocking a 2-hour window. The first 30 minutes is like setting up of all the gear. And then the subsequent 90 minutes is just doing the recording. And the recording, kind of the secret sauce of things that I would send in this little box, would be a lavalier, a professional lavalier microphone, like a TRS normal 8-inch connector that plugs into a USB interface. I'll show you that in a minute. And then on the Windows side, we would use the Windows Camera app on their system to record locally. And then on the Mac, we would use an app called Swift Capture. You could also use QuickTime on the Mac, but the Swift Capture was allowed you to record 1080p at lower bit rates. And it also was hardware accelerated. So like the fans wouldn't kick on the Mac. And I just thought it was a better recording program. And then we would have the client send me the files on a Dropbox link. I just put it in the chat. They would click on the link, and then they would upload the files. This is a picture of kind of what it looks like. So on the left, you see the one sheet that I would include in the box. And it's shrunk down a little bit, but it's basically like a paint by numbers. Plug in the computer, attach the webcam to the stand, attach the ring light. So there's 2 stands in the kit. There's a ring light with just a simple controller. The webcam is a C922 webcam that just screws in with a 1/4-20 on the top of this stand. There's a hub. The hub gets the light and the webcam plugged in, and then it also gets the lavalier mic, which you see here. It plugs into this small little USB interface, which then plugs into the hub, which then plugs into the computer.
Tim,
and that's it.
How did you go about vetting the gear? I mean, I imagine it was a lot like Dave and the guys. You kind of learned through doing a lot of research and stuff. How did you vet this gear and decide this was kind of where you wanted it to be?
Well, I wanted it to be, and in my slide notes, I have like a big disclaimer. It's like, in production, of course, there's so many different ways to do things, and there's so many different tools. I just kind of tried to make it as simple. I try to put myself like in the client's shoes, who oftentimes they're not used to taking this much time out to set anything up. So I wanted to make it easy, like And I figured if they can just plug a camera in that just powers to the laptop, they don't have to worry about an external camera. To be honest, I just kind of looked on Amazon for like the best ring light reviews. And then I ordered everything, of course, and set it up and tested it. And I mean, that's kind of how the Tascam lavalier, I picked that because it's got a longer reach on it, and it's a thicker cable than like the Rode and the Sennheisers. So it's just more robust, I found. That's my rationale for picking that as I pick different mics.
Did you have any troubles with ordering gear and it not being available, or how did that work?
Yeah, for sure. At the beginning, the webcams were very hard to get. So it was like eBay fest on all that. And I would just I would buy them from wherever I could get them. But now the webcams are back. Like you can get the C922 on B&H for I think like $100. Okay. And they're in stock finally. But that was a challenge for sure.
Oh yeah, I'll bet.
At the beginning. But at first I was doing the webcam on the laptop, but then that was just cumbersome. And so I ended up just doing a stand for the webcam. And then I actually have the people stand up. I'll show you just a couple of quick other slides here. So this is a shot of a screen grab of a gal. She's standing up. The camera's kind of at eye level on the table in front of her. The ring light's over here. She actually had a photo kind of back. This is a practical little seamless back thing she had on her wall. This is a gal, just a plain white wall. So we try to keep the backgrounds as plain as possible. Every now and then, like this guy here, he's like, oh, I want to put my monitor in there, which is fine. But sometimes, these can cause white balance, weird issues, and other types of things like that.
Reflections, so, I'm sure, are a challenge.
Yeah. And then I just a couple other just quick tips here. I mean, Mark, you can stop me, or if I need to speed up or slow down, you just tell me. I'm just going through my list.
No, go right ahead. We're good at the moment.
Okay. These are some kind of gotchas or things that I've learned through a lot of pain and suffering. The client should set the gear up ahead of the call for sure, because a couple of reasons why. Number one, if you're on a Windows system, when you plug the webcam in the first time, it like loads a driver and you have to reboot. When you plug in the USB audio device, the little Sabrent dongle thing, on the PC, it will take over your speaker as well. It'll change the default audio device. So they need to be familiar with like how to change that back to their normal speaker. Otherwise, it's just kind of kludgy. But worst case, you could talk them through it on the day of, which I've had to do a lot. I just tell people to close out of all the programs on their laptops and phones just so we don't have distractions. Just make sure they pick the right mic in Zoom, and in Windows, it's called the USB audio device. That's what it shows up as. And if you pick it in Windows, in the sound settings, when you go into the Windows camera app, it will record the USB audio device. That's what you want to make sure you have. On the Mac, you can select it in your recording program. I like to put the audio level in Zoom on auto. And I know like a lot of camera guys might cringe, like never use auto. And I was the same way, but I found that you can't write it and it's really hard to monitor. There's no VUs or anything per se. So I just found keeping it on auto, most of the time Zoom will push it all the way up, which then reflects in the master control panel and all that on your recording. But sometimes if there's like a really loud person, it will tap it down a little bit and prevent it from clipping. And then another little trick is I request remote control of their Zoom screen share. Some of you might be familiar with that, but it just allows me to stop and start the recording right on their screens. Because once we get rolling, like I don't want to have them break their concentration. When they are sharing their screen on Zoom, there is a bit of a lag. But if you choose optimize for video playback, it helps with that. There's a little button you can choose when you screen share, but it is about 1 second. And I just tell the client, like, you'll kind of get used to it. I mean, it's just like part of the deal. Make sure there's no windows behind the person. Make sure try the different color selections on the ring light. Normally the white is just fine, but sometimes you can toggle over to the tungsten if you have a lot of tungsten in the room. And then most importantly, do a test record and upload it before you start your recording session, because if there's anything wrong or like if there's a rolling shutter from a monitor, or if there's a buzz in the line, or if there's anything weird. Sometimes you just can't see it in Zoom, but you can see it on the full 1080p record. So I have them do a little test. I send it, they send it to me, and then if we're good, then we start recording. And then this is just kind of in action. This is me here on the right in Zoom. So the gal on the left is sharing her screen with me, launching the Swift Capture app. And you can see here in the audio, we have the USB audio device selected. So we're recording the log, we're recording her here. And in Zoom, there's a side-by-side mode. So I can slide this panel over. So here I'm seeing my gal in Zoom in sync. And then this is her screen share of the recording, a little bit delayed, but I can see the view and I can see her being recorded. So that's kind of it. This is a Windows shot. In Windows, it's the same idea, but they just use the camera app. So this is kind of what it looks like and what you kind of see. So, and then go ahead, Mark.
No, so some of the challenges obviously are getting this stuff done, recorded and properly, but sometimes you've got background issues. The people are in a house, they don't ever think of it as they're not at the office. They've got tight spaces and window or a door, and it's tough. So what do you do when you're faced with backgrounds that are tricky or they don't like?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And that happens a lot. I mean, we try, I would say 75% of the time, if they pick like a super clean background, that's just clean edges and very straightforward, they're okay with it. It's kind of like a white seamless in a way. And we just do a little bit of color correction or vignetting and it's fine, but sometimes it's not. I'll show you a few just real quick. An example of this guy right here did this recording in his bedroom, right? And he's got this weird light and he's like, I know I want to switch my background out. So this is the recording of him. This is the C922 webcam with the lav. And then right here is what we did was we used a program called unscreen.com. And it allowed us to basically take that background out. Unscreen.com is the URL. It basically allows you to, if the shot's pretty still, I mean, most of our shots are pretty still and the algorithm can find the face pretty well. Here's another example. So this guy right here was in his basement and they didn't like it. He thought it was too dark. And so what we did is, so we put in a background here of just, kind of an office. And my thing is it looks, I think it looks better than Zoom. It actually looks pretty good, but it's a way that you can offer the client something to swap out a background if they're really not, pleased with having their room. You can put in something different.
Tim, I have a question about that. Did you have to put the background in frame by frame, or did that program allow you to do it just as a whole?
Yeah, so the program is pretty slick, actually. I'll share it with you here. What it does is it takes the video. You basically like do your cut, right? And then like, let's say I had that guy and it's a 10-second clip. I would just upload it. I export it as like ProRes LT and I just drag it here. I just upload the clip and then boom, it'll just look at it and punch it out. And then you can save it. Like you can composite little random stuff in there. Like, oh, I want to see what the city or this looks like. But then you can choose like an editor export and it gives you a 1920 1080 MP4 at like 50 megabit RGB and an alpha. And then you just Luma mat it in Premiere and you just put anything you want underneath it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So it's unscreen.com.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think you had mentioned if you want to put your own background in, there's an additional service they offer where they'll send you a punch out.
Yeah, that's what so when you upload it, they kind of give you two options. They say, would you like to have us composite it for you? And then if you do that, like you pick one of their predefined backgrounds, And then they'll send it out to you, but it's kind of a lower quality. But for editing, you just choose like the pro package or whatever, and they'll give you, like I said, the full raster RGB plus alpha. Nice. So it's like a moving black and white, and then the RGB underneath, and you just luma matte the thing out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is great, Tim. Thank you for that deep dive there into your process, and I'm sure you've learned a lot and continue to learn a lot about this as you go forward.
For sure.
Much like the boys at Voice and Video have, and I know you guys have self-taught, and you had. I think back in September, I helped you work on one of your first big shows, like a 3 or 4 day, all virtual meeting with breakouts and such. And what was that like? And now what are you doing with that? And how are you expanding on that? Give us kind of a deep dive into what you're doing now with your protocols.
Yeah. So similar to how Tim started out, we went down a similar path, researching gear and putting together what we call fly packs that we would ship to a client, with a ring light, a webcam, that stuff. And we quickly found that we could not handle the volume with that, and that the quality that we were achieving by doing that wasn't enough to justify for our clients. We had the 2 events that you're talking about in September. I had 2 overlapping at the same time. I'm sure you remember we had a whole mess of desks in the warehouse besides all the ones that we were working, and we had to record 140 talks just for one of those events, all virtually. So we kind of streamlined it a little bit in the fact that we just came up with a PowerPoint presentation that we sent out, and that was all the pre-call. We didn't have any pre-call. It was just a best practices PowerPoint sheet. It said, wear these clothes, basic white wall is best, all that kind of stuff. I asked about the unscreen because we got into that with a couple clients where the record tech said, oh yeah, I can swap out your background, no big deal. And then he got stuck doing it frame by frame, and we had to pretty quickly say, nope, we're not offering that service. We just don't have the time or the manpower to do it. Mm-hmm. But we had kind of a head start on the platform side of it. We've been doing a lot of streaming events for years, and we have a great programmer in-house, and he just, he didn't sleep for a month. I don't think he was living at the office designing these platforms, because we custom design all the platforms to host it ourselves. We used Zoom as a mechanism to get people in, to get our sources, but then we push everything out to our own platform. Which is completely customizable. So you can change the background, the fonts, where the windows are, add the chat. You could have the whole agenda page. So we had that all pretty dialed in. And we're still doing a lot of those.
Most of your stuff is live though, too. Not some pre-record, but mostly live at the end of the day.
Correct. Yeah. So we're bouncing, like on a 3 or 4 day conference, we're bouncing between live and pre-recorded all day long, going back and forth, whether it's a Zoom call or something we pre-recorded early on. Then we'll integrate Zoom for the breakout room. So you click on breakout room 1 and it takes you to this talk, which is 20 people. Breakout room 2, another 30 people over here. So it was really about, obviously with virtual, you don't get the live interaction that you normally get. So the content has to be really engaging, and you have to be able to go from place to place to keep people interested for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier on that, and Tim alluded to it as well, is that, pre-production was, you did it, you kind of got together and you sort of did it, not last second, but you felt confident when you were on site, you could do it. How much more pre-production now are you doing, and what are you doing now to make these meetings happen?
So there's a lot more pre-production, especially when we're designing the platform for each one. You have a whole week of pre-production just designing out the platform, or more, depending on how detailed it is. And then there's the whole schedule, because the client who doesn't quite know, they'll want to jump from this to this to this. And it's like, no, you can't go from these 6 live people to these 6 live people. I need a 5-minute break or a 15-minute break of pre-recorded content in order to set up all these other Zoom calls. there's just, for the 3-day events, there's months of planning that go into it in order for it to go off seamlessly.
And how much pre-planning beforehand was it a 3-day event?
A week, couple weeks, maybe. It just depends. You know, some of the high-end ones, of course, you have months of set design, but you don't start getting your speakers involved and your presenters involved until a week before. Okay. Or now we're getting them involved a month.
Well, show me a little bit then about what you do now. What does a virtual meeting look like there at Voice and Video at Studio H, I believe? That's where you are. What does that look like? You want to show us kind of, how does that?
So actually, we can show a little video. Bill has been doing most of our R&D and developing some of the products. We're doing a show right now that is shooting 2 days a week. Yep. It's a web series. I'll let Bill talk a little bit about it, and then we'll roll a quick little video.
Yeah, so we're actually doing a show with Jeff Kraft. He's a local artist here, and he's doing a show called Cheer Match. And it kind of started off as, you know, we want to do some sort of virtual production, kind of like what you were talking about with those companies earlier today. And we did a ton of research trying to figure out what program to use, how to do it cost effectively, because I remember doing CES right before COVID hit and seeing the Samsung wall. I believe like Ghostbusters was there, and they were moving the camera around doing these virtual productions, but it was way out of the budget. You're talking millions of dollars to get involved with it. So we tried to find a more cost-effective way of doing it, found some people locally who were kind of starting to dabble with it, but it wasn't really mainstream. And we ended up finding a program called Ximmetry and using Unreal Engine, and we were able to do it cost-effectively here in our studio and do virtual productions where it's not, you know, we're on a green screen set where you're not just standing there and it's a plate behind you. You can walk and interact with the virtual set, and that's one of the things that this commercial will show you, and kind of show you what we've kind of evolved. So here at Studio H, we have the 30 by 25 foot cyc wall, and we can do that here. We can't do that at Studio R. It's just not designed and built out for that. We've got special cameras. We've got a special massive computer in the background that's ingesting everything and processing everything. And you know, it was 3 months of pulling my hair out, trying to say, you know, not trying to walk away from the client saying, we can't do this, but we ended up pulling through, and now they're here 2 to 3 times a week, and we're doing these virtual productions. We haven't released this commercial that you're going to see, so this is actually the first time that it's been out there. So yeah, Jake, if you guys are there, if you guys want to roll that commercial.
How you doing? I'm Jeff Kraft, local on-camera personality here in San Diego. I work with NBC as the entertainment reporter. I also represent brands all over the country and all over the world. What brought me here to Voice and Video Studio H is I'm hosting it's an all-star cheer competition. It's a 15-week competition. And what I needed a team that knew how to facilitate a virtual set, which is something a lot of people are still getting used to. But what they were able to do is bring in a team to create an unbelievable virtual set where I'm truly animated. It's 3D, and I get to play with that set. It's been a whole lot of fun. As you can see, they've got an incredible studio, but it's not just about the studio that I'm standing on right now, because it's all green screen. Whatever you're looking at possibly on your screen isn't really here. But what they have behind the scenes is the team. They've got an entire podcast room, their production area where the editing bays are, everything is top of the line. The lights, I mean, they've really invested in this to make their studio look good, which in turn, well, it makes our project look as good as it can be in San Diego. So it's been a pleasure working with Voice and Video, and we'll be in here next week shooting another episode.
Nice. So, yeah. Right there. Okay, cool. Wow, that's kind of like when we did some of that XR wall that we were talking about, the XR stages. That's fascinating.
Yeah, the big difference is we don't have the LED wall. We have to do it on a green screen.
Sure, so. That's okay. And then that technology exists. That's another great tool to understand. So you've got that as a thing, kind of a video that you're doing and you're shooting that. What about a meeting? What about somebody who wants to come in and do a fundraiser they did or that? What does that look like? And how do you guys handle that at Voice and Video?
Sure. So this cyc wall gets painted sometimes twice a week. It just depends on what we're doing. Usually it's either chroma key green or TV white. we've got a full light grid in here with a projector, moving lights, colored lights.
Pause you real quick. Jake, do you want to switch to the remote camera? As he's talking, I can show this off.
So there's RGB AW plus UV lights in the ceiling, along with a bunch of moving lights with different patterns. So we can create something that we would create in a ballroom with lighting effects. And typically we'll have the auctioneer will just be out here talking to the camera, interacting with the client. He's got 2 monitors in front of him over here. That's showing him what's selling on the auction platform and what's going out live. So he can talk and say, oh, hey, Mark, you just bid $50 on this camera. That's way too cheap. Forget you. We're moving on to somebody else. That kind of a thing. Everything is then broadcast through here. If Bill can follow me through here without tripping. We do have a lighting console set up here so we can control everything, do different lighting looks throughout the show. Coming out of the studio.
And for those of you who would like to know, this is the old Grijalva stage in Kearney Mesa, for those who were wondering where this might be.
Yeah. So we were lucky enough to benefit on some of their hard work. They had already installed the lighting grid, but we built out this whole production room. So we've got a video and director desk here and an audio desk here. So these guys are controlling everything, making us look and sound good while we're here. Matt has to do all the R&D for the virtual set. Jake today. You're Jake today. So, and as we move on through, we created a green screen, or a green room and conference room. So the client and the staff who is running the back end of the auction software and making sure everything's running smooth is usually working in here. And these 2 TVs show program feeds. So they can see what's going on live while they're on their laptops, figuring out what we need to do next, who's bidding, what's going on. We've got some extra space down here. This is normally our podcasting room, but it's set for an event that we're doing next week where we're going to have an extra green screen person in there. And then the next room over is just an editing office where either the producer or the editing team usually hangs out and does their stuff in there.
Nice.
And that's kind of the whole studio. The rest is where we keep our gear and our storage. You guys don't need to want to see that.
Nice. So when
no matter how often we clean it, it's always a mess.
Always, never fails. It's what you have a curtain and a door for. So your studio was great, obviously, where you cut all of this, your control room, and that's a lot of hardware that you drive this. But what are some of the other solutions that you use when you're, say, on site at a press conference or stuff to cut? Wirecast, I understand, is something you guys embrace, correct?
Yes, we use Wirecast a lot, and that's because we already own 8 licenses of it. So rather than trying to invest a bunch of money in vMix or one of the other softwares, we've just kind of built upon the Wirecast. Mm-hmm. You probably know it has a few things like Rendezvous. So it's kind of Rendezvous can get you a higher resolution signal than Zoom. It's a face-to-face type of a program. I have found that it's been glitchy once you get up to 4 or more people. Mm-hmm. So we still use a lot of Zoom.
With Rendezvous, you get a much clearer, much better image, but the infrastructure, when we worked with Wirecast directly, obviously I'm on the sales side of everything. When Wirecast was first, it was kind of just a fun feature to have if you needed a virtual host. And once COVID hit, what you guys are talking about, the lavaliers, the ring lights, we sold out of all of that stuff within weeks. It was just gone. Our shelves were empty, calling the manufacturers. We couldn't get anything from China or anything. But when it came to Rendezvous with Wirecast, we were talking to them saying, sell Wirecast. So people are buying the licenses and starting to use Rendezvous. Wirecast, the company, put very little R&D into Rendezvous. So when everyone tried to use it, their system and their server wasn't able to handle it because Rendezvous was based on the Wirecast server, and all of a sudden everybody's on it at once. So They're slowly getting it better, but it's it's not there quite yet. Like you were saying, more people on there crashing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. It's one of those things that Wirecast has, and I know that you use it because it's got a number of features in it for switching.
Yep.
And with that, you've got a number of things to do now on a meeting setup. And you had mentioned earlier in one of our pre-calls, Shooty, that you're finding you're not the one-man band anymore. You're finding virtual is divvying out the work. Tell me about how that's shifting with this virtual work.
Yeah, that is definitely, that became apparent pretty quick that I just couldn't handle it on my own. So I needed to shift certain responsibilities over. So the website design goes to my programmer. The recording, I will assign 1 or 2 people who will be in charge of scheduling all the recordings and then executing those recordings online. Because, you know, if you're doing 100 recordings, I can't deal with that. I have to deal with the, you know, help with the programming of the site or the planning of the script and the run of show. So it's really been a big team effort where, especially if you get more than one virtual event going at a time, I have to share all that work. And we have a few people that, you know, have remained full time that take the bulk of it. And then we have a pretty good core group of freelancers that I just share that responsibility with.
Well, before I move on to the kind of the final portion of this, not all of us are going to have a studio. And while we could certainly use it, sometimes the client wants to have something done on location. So what is your recommendation for like a lightweight package that you would go out to do a virtual meeting with? What do you recommend? You know, the ATEM minis or something. What do you think is a good lightweight solution?
For a complete package, or are you specifically asking about like a video switcher type?
Yeah, well, just a little stream thing. You want to go out, you want to stream a meeting, somebody's there. It's a lightweight solution that you might be able to incorporate on location fairly quickly to set up. Yeah,
so I really like the new Blackmagic ATEM ISO, the Mini Pro ISO. The Extreme just came out, which I haven't had a chance to play with yet because I don't think they haven't started shipping yet. No. But the Mini Pro ISO has got a lot of cool functions, including ISO recording, where you just plug in a hard drive. And I know they have a codec that streams, but I don't use that. I always still feed it into Wirecast and send it out that way.
Okay. That's a good idea. And that takes any camera and pretty much that you could put into that, correct?
Yeah. Blackmagic used to be a pain in the butt down the line where everything had to be very specific, the camera, the codec. Their new stuff is, you can plug anything into it. And
very forgiving now, yeah. Where it used to just be, you didn't know why you had a black screen.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. And that's all HDMI input, but you can always convert down from an SDI if you had that.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, you guys, quite an impressive facility. And I know that this is in the almost year this has all happened. There have been highs and lows. So what have you learned from this process, good and bad? And what kind of tips would you give us going forward, those of us who are watching here, about this process, things to remember?
Well, I learned a lot in this process. One of them was to trust the people around you. I gave Bill a really hard time when he was investing money in some of the stuff in this place, and made him keep a spreadsheet for when it got paid off, and it's paid off tenfold. So, me being having kind of the business owner brain, like not into the R&D portion, I was, watching every penny because I didn't know when the next paycheck was coming in.
There was a lot of money being poured into here, and we were crossing our fingers like we've got to make this happen. And we made it happen.
I think that, we kind of stuck to our core philosophy of doing customer service, and it's really paid off. Clients have been very happy with what we've been able to produce, and I'm not saying that we're producing the best virtual events out there or the best content, but we're able to produce it at a level that is affordable for the client, and we've been getting a lot of repeat business and a lot of word of mouth. We still haven't advertised at all since we started all this. So,
well, speaking of your clients and word of mouth, what are you hearing from them about this process? What are they liking? What are they not liking of live versus virtual?
Well, it's a very mixed bag. I have a lot of clients that can't wait to get back to a live environment, and I have some that never want to go back. I think it's going to end up being a mixture. We're going to do hybrid events. We've done a couple hybrid events so far, but really not a true hybrid because there's still not a live audience, but they're doing them in ballrooms. I think it's going to go back sooner than later, but it's going to start, and it's going to be a long process once it does start.
Okay. And Tim, how about you? You've learned a lot, and with what you've done, you've created an interesting method by which to record. So what have you learned from that process, good and bad, and what can you recommend going forward for folks who maybe want to tackle this?
Yeah, it has been a learning process for sure. My advice would be try to make it as systematized as you can. So like Dave was saying earlier, if he's got 100 records, he can't do everything. Like you got to have, in our case, on my team, I had someone that did all the scheduling. And then I had someone that did all the pre-calls. I had like a director, Mark, actually, you helped me direct some of them. I directed some. I had an editing team that helped. So compartmentalizing and systematizing, even down to what the emails say, it's copy paste, because if you try to reinvent the wheel every single time, like you will just spend endless amounts of pre-production time, which segues into the fact that pre-production in this environment on everything, and I've been doing more, of the videos like out in the field now and doing some pre-recorded events that we live stream. But in all cases, the pre-production time in this environment, make sure you budget for it, because it is just totally eye-opening how much time it takes to get people on Zoom together and like hash out all these fine details. It's just a harder way, I think, to communicate, but you can do it. But just be prepared. Those are kind of some of the lessons that I've learned.
What are your clients saying about this kind of a process?
For the most part, they're happy with it. I mean, they like, I think they enjoy the quality of it, and then just having somebody from a production background kind of hold their hand through it and give them tips and advice. I think that part of it has been successful. The part that sometimes I run into is that depending on who you're interviewing, you're asking the client to do a little more work than they normally would. So if there's someone who's really motivated, like, hey, I'm trying to sell a product and I'll do anything it takes to get on the camera, it's gonna be easier to work with that person versus like a CEO's like, what am I doing? Like, I don't have time for this. So you have to kind of be aware of who you're working with, and then determine at what level you want to, how complicated you want to get, basically.
Well, I'll finish up then, Tim, with you on a question I'll ask both of you, but I'll start with you then. How do you see virtual production fitting into your production process once the pandemic is over? Do you see it there? Do you see it still having a role, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, like Dave was saying earlier, we're going to see a little bit of both. I do think that this solution, the remote recording thing, will be around and is a good option. I mean, to be able to record, I did a guy from the UK yesterday, and like just to be able to record someone, in England and kind of have the edit turned around the next day is pretty eye-opening compared to being on a plane and doing all that stuff, or trying to coordinate.
You didn't send any gear to him, right? Or did you?
Yeah, and that one actually, he had some gear already, because I found also, just as an aside, that if you're shipping and buying gear in the United States, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like, okay, Amazon Prime. But if someone's in Australia or the UK or wherever, it doesn't make sense to try to gather the gear and ship it with all the tariffs and everything. So in that case, he had like earpods that he used for a microphone, and I actually kind of had him use his laptop, but I had him get it up towards eye level, and I had him move some practical lights around. So I worked, and I still had him record it locally, which is the key. So going back to what I was saying earlier, depending on who the person behind the camera is, sometimes if you had to do something last minute, You can still record it locally using those techniques that I showed you.
Yeah.
You can use the internal webcam, or if they have like a wired microphone or something, you're going to get better quality than recording it over Zoom.
Nice.
So, but
right,
one other quick thing,
ahead.
I just don't think that as a shooter, like if you were to ask, am I a fan? I would just say creatively, it's a lot harder to look through the eyepiece and tell someone to move a camera or go to the background, or my right shoulder, my left shoulder. Like if I'm on site, I'm just doing all those things sight unseen, and I'm just making it exactly what I want. But in Zoom, you have to wear a technical hat. You have to be a director, and then you're also kind of an editor. So you have to wear all those different hats, and it's just a different experience, know.
Right. A good skill set to start developing, especially in this in this sort of pandemic season. Before I just wrap it up here with Shooty, folks, you got your questions. Start getting those ready, because I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask these fine gentlemen here. And then we'll wrap up then you with Shooty. What about you? What do you think? You had sort of alluded to it with the hybrid meeting, that idea. But how is this going to play going forward in your process, in your meeting process?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I see my travel schedule going way down, as it has this year already. Over the last year, I don't see it coming back. Those long trips to Europe and around the United States to produce these meetings are probably going to be much less, unfortunately, because I enjoy those. But I think that we're still going to have a lot of, like I said, a lot of both. I think we're going to continue with a lot of this pre-production. And we're going to be assisting more with the content and the actual flow of the meeting rather than just the execution. And for us, I think that it'll be different, but I think it'll be just as fulfilling. I think it's kind of going to be a whole new world, but a little bit of the old stuff still mixed in there.
Nice. Well, we know that we're slowly returning to the old world, at least what we think will be the old world, but we'll be having a lot of new stuff in it as we move forward. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I know that you've agreed to stay around for some questions, so we're at that point where we can start picking off questions. And I believe, Jeff, are we going to throw to you or Robin? Who's going to be handling our questions?
I actually I've compiled a few of the questions here.
Okay.
Dave Schweitzer, are you still with us? There you are. You had a question about sourcing equipment. Still there, Dave? One of the Daves we know. All right. Assuming he may have stepped away from the mic, I'll move on to the next one, which was Mike Watson. Mike, are you there with us? I'm looking.
I'm here with you, but whatever my question was, I think it was taken care of. But
it might have been sometime. But
read my question to me, I'll remember what it was.
Yeah, you were asking about watching live via Zoom and recording locally at the same time. Did we cover that? I may have missed that.
Yeah, I touched on it briefly, but the principle is that you set up the Zoom to be the portal in which you talk to the subject, and if they want to have producers on the line, so you do a call like this. But like if I was recording David, then I would have, at this point, I'd have David share his screen. I'd have him open up, Windows camera app, and I'd have him start recording there on his shared screen so I can see it go down, basically.
Do you get resistance on that, on the screen share thing from the client or from whoever the end user is?
No. Not really. I mean, I tell them ahead of time that I'm going to do it, but most of the time at the beginning, I was taking remote control and doing all the clicking myself. And I think it was a little weird for them. So I think people are pretty receptive. I'm like, okay, go down and type in sound and get to your sound settings. Okay, go to the microphone. Okay, USB audio device. Okay, that's great. Now type in camera. Okay, launch your camera app. Okay, let's turn the camera off in Zoom, because in Windows, you can't have the camera going in Zoom and in the camera app. So they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. So they feel like they're a part of it. And then once the recording starts, I like to have control just so I can stop and start them, because once we do the test and they upload it to me and I confirm everything's good, and once we get going, then it's pretty much, we just get into content mode and we talk, and I'll break the clips up. I also find that the webcams, it's not perfect sync. So sometimes like the frame rate's 29.91 or something. So I do fewer clips so I don't have to find the sync in Premiere, and on a Mac, it's about 8 frames. On a PC, it's about 2 to 3. Once you get it in sync, it doesn't drift, but I try to cut the work down on my end.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bob, did you want to pipe in with your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious whether any of you thought about or what your opinion would be of using OBS for doing some of the recording.
Tim, I know you've sort of played with OBS, but what's your thought?
Yep. I mean, I kind of, in my testing, I ran the gamut of all different types of things. I tried using OBS, and ultimately I was having an issue with trying to have Zoom show it as like a virtual camera or something. And it wasn't, in the end, it was just easier for me to not record through the internet. So when at the beginning, I was recording across the web, and I would get, even in OBS, I would still get a lot of dropouts. If their internet was bad, like their audio would be bad. So even if they have internet problems, I can still get a totally clean record when they're punching it up on their own laptop. It's even if their feed went totally down, they're still recording it in full 1080. And on the Windows, it does like about 25 megabit per second 1080p, which is pretty good. And then on the Mac, you can do similar with that program.
Okay.
So we'll pull in a lot of recordings through Rendezvous, or we'll pull them in through Zoom and then record them. We'll use Zoom as a virtual camera and record it into Wirecast, just for, sheer volume when we're doing that, to try to get all of the clients to record it on their own computer and ship it to us. That doesn't always work well for our clients. So we'll do a lot of recordings through the internet like that, but you lose quality. And if they're doing a presentation with a PowerPoint, then we'll get the original PowerPoint file and we'll make their window, a little small pip. So you don't see as the graininess and the quality, the quality isn't as important because you've got a high resolution image of what they're presenting, and it's just a low resolution image of them. So we've done a lot of that for our corporate clients.
Nice.
And to follow up on that, sometimes I'll just have, I have in certain cases, just have them record the audio. Like in Windows, you can launch voice recorder and just record it. And then they just send me the audio file afterwards, and I just marry it up, and then I don't have any dropouts, and it's like 44.1, like at 256K or something.
Kevin Baird, you just had a quick question about unscreened. If you want to wait, is Kevin still here? I'm looking at I think Kevin.
I am still here. I don't
there you
remember
are.
what my question was.
You had a question about unscreen. I don't know that it was.
Oh, the question was even the alpha channel version of it is also free. The editor version.
No, Unscreen has different packages, and they basically charge by the minute, or you could buy a package. It's all the pricing's on their website. No, it's not free. No.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it for the questions that we have in the chat.
All right. Any live questions folks have been dying to ask? You've got some of San Diego's finest right here, so take advantage of asking questions from these gurus of the gigabit and see what you can get answered here. Help you out.
I have a short practical question, and that is, I'm shooting an event that's out in a schoolyard, and can I run a Cat5 cable 200 feet from the server out to my computer out there? Will Cat5 survive for 200 feet?
Shooty.
Yes. Yes, it will, as long as you have a quality cable.
Great, you just saved me a lot of money.
We have a bonded cellular system that we use a lot when that's not available. Bill knows more about it than I do. All I know is that it works and it's saved my bacon more than once. So
That's big ticket stuff.
Thank you.
Nice. Who else is
So
out there?
I've got a question. I've
ahead,
got a
Jane.
question about remote recording, if I could. Just having worked with so many corporate clients in the past, there are often those things that you want to mention to your interviewee in kind of a private way. There may be some sort of adjustment that needs to be made to how they're saying something, or maybe they've got a little eyebrow quirk or something like that. How are you communicating that information that we used to be able to pull somebody aside or even pull a crew member aside? You know, I'm remembering a situation where we had something going on with lighting and a hair color. And, you know, you would just pull your DP aside, make the adjustments. You could be very quiet about it. You could pull that interviewee aside and just say, hey, I just want you to relax your forehead, you know, something like that. How are you communicating those messages now that you can't do it in quite such a private way?
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, it's just everybody sees what I see, you know. So if there's producers on there, and I that's why I just try to be upfront with people and tell them, educate them on the process. And I always tell them, okay, on the shoot day, it's 30 minutes to set everything up. And they said there's going to be a lot of little adjustments. I'm just going to have you be on my team and help me out. And I'll just tell them, I'll say, you know, let's move the light up. We don't want it underneath, you know, we don't want it to look like a scary movie. We want to have it up top so it's a little more flattering. Okay, that's good. And I'll just work with them to get what we need. And I'll tell them, you know, hey, just reach up real quick and put your hair down. And that's the only way I can do it. I can't just walk up and do it. So I just find trying to build, just like in person, you know, just trying to build rapport with people, look them in the eye and just, and they're on the team, so they'll do it.
Sense of humor when you can, I guess, is part of it.
What's that?
A sense of humor.
Yeah.
You want it to look like a scary movie rather than you look 20 years older than you are because you've got huge dark circles.
Right.
Well, what I've been doing is I'll create breakout rooms within my Zoom call before the recording. So I'll have one be a live room, one be a waiting room, one be a green room. And so I'll push people into the breakout room if I need to tell them something separately. And then I'll push them back into the live room and say, okay, we're ready to go now, kind of a thing.
I've seen some of our clients who, while live in an interview, they'll tell them live, hey, can you just brush your hair back, or you got something on your shoulder there, and they'll say it live in the show. And a lot of the time, it kind of creates more of a realism. This is a truly live show when people are watching it, because sometimes people are watching it, they don't know if it's live or is this pre-recorded. And when you do that, you're like, oh wow, this is live. It's kind of, you know, you're watching, you know, a Tonight Show or something. It's like sometimes they just have to say, hey, you got a piece of string right there. And it brings some sort of realism to the actual live event.
Or I'll send a private chat as well if they're live already.
Okay. Thank you. Very good.
Next. Take advantage. Don't waste the opportunity. I don't want to see any questions afterwards. Come on. Schultze, you got to have a question.
This is your last chance ever.
That's right. You'll never see these people again.
Right, we got one question coming from Dan on YouTube. So let me pull that question up. Working with the LA streaming company, they're telling me they are all about the advantages of their audio sweetening during live events and how superior it is. What are they talking about? So this is coming from Dan on YouTube.
What program were they asking about?
They didn't mention the program, but the advantages of audio sweetening. So that's their, their disclaimer or call to fame of why to work with them, that their audio sweetening is more superior than other production companies. So Dan's asking, what is audio sweetening and what are they talking about?
In a live environment, or is that kind of what his point is?
Like
yes.
Huh.
That sounds like a marketing ploy, just a tool of, if I explain something to you, you're not going to understand it. So that's the easiest way I can say it. And I'm the best. Trust me and go with it. That's it. That's what that sounds like to me.
All right. Oh, here's a question, Michael. Oh, that is the question. Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was the question, and it's focused on live streaming. So yeah,
That's like saying Voice and Video is the best live streaming company. Come work with us because we've got the best gear in town. That's all it's saying. It's not giving enough information.
yeah, and I think for the audio sweetening, at least from my experience, is that if they're focusing more on making the audio sound better than the rest of us, then okay, so be it. But it is what it is. So.
But you're going to upload it to YouTube or Facebook or whatever streaming platform you're using, and maybe all that audio sweetening just went away.
Yeah.
Jim
I have an
Staley,
audio-related question.
You got to be doing some of this stuff, Jim. You got any questions? That's great that we could answer all of the questions. This is awesome. That was just terrific.
We were just too good.
I know.
That's too much information.
Too much preparation. Dang it.
I do have an audio question.
Who's this?
This is Kevin.
Okay, Kevin.
Regarding the Blackmagic Design Atom systems, when you guys use that for like webcasting or even ISO recording, is all your audio analog and run through like a Mackie mixer and then muxed into the encoder switcher at that time, or do you just run mics to the cameras and let that all come into the switcher through HDMI with the picture to maintain sync?
We run everything through a digital mixer. Depending on where it's at, we use QSC, we use Soundcraft. Jake, who's in the audio booth right now, could probably tell me all the ones that we use, but we run it all through a digital mixer and then XLR into the switcher.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, well, on YouTube, Dan was mentioning that they're pushing vMix in their production. So have y'all used vMix or some of the other switching software?
Wirecast is our go-to software if we look through stuff.
Yeah, I've used vMix a little bit. It's pretty cool. It's just, as I mentioned before, we're already pretty heavily invested in Wirecast, so.
Okay.
They all kind of do the same things. Some of them are a little better in other areas than others, but they all kind of accomplish the same task.
I did notice that vMix is a PC-only program, I believe, and Wirecast is cross-platform.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody? Anyone?
Bueller.
All right. Well, next time, guys, hold back some information.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. I'll definitely hold back information next time. But until then, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, for your information, for your expertise. I think we learned a lot. And Jane, I don't know if you have any little final comments you want to wrap up with.
Well, just a reminder that tonight's broadcast will be on YouTube. It's on there live right now, but it lives on our YouTube site along with all the rest of our meetings. So if you miss anything or know somebody who may be interested in learning more about this topic or others, refer them to our YouTube page or to our website because everything is linked from the website. And as you mentioned earlier, Mark, our resources page is really full of some great information. So take a look there. We have the direct link to tonight's meeting. We will have access to some of the materials that were shared tonight. So take a look there. And aside from that, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of Media Pros. If you are not currently a member and you enjoyed the meeting, please consider joining us. Membership is only $50 a year for new members, or if you are a renewal made by June 30th, 2021. We would encourage you to be part of the best media organization in the San Diego area. And please continue to reach out to us with questions and ideas for our upcoming meetings. We have planned out next month. And that reminds me, Tom Kinnaman, do you want to give us a quick update on
Absolutely. Ripple Training has been around quite a long time, and we've got the two guys that have really put it together, Steve Martin and his sidekick Mark there, although he'll probably say, wait a minute, it's the other way around. But so I'm looking forward to, the area that I want to focus on, because we are professionals and we want to sell our products also, is how did they become trainers? How did they figure out how to found their business? So I want everybody to think about, what does it take to share your media? They're selling a lot of templates now and that kind of a thing as well. So there's an opportunity to kind of get some inside information on how to build your business in that way and better build that out as well.
That's very true. And also, as we're thinking about our alternative revenue streams, about new ways to run our business, they may have some insights on that, knowing that a lot of people in our industry have pivoted to training on what we know. And we'll see what insights Steve and Mark may have for us on that.
Yeah.
So join us. That meeting is on Wednesday, March 24th.
Whatever our usual Wednesday is, the fourth Wednesday of the month.
Back to our usual Wednesday. Yes. And the idea of alternative revenue streams is something that came to us from the survey. So we are taking the ideas that were in the survey seriously and planning programming for the rest of the year to help build businesses and build visibility for our members and for friends of SD Media Pro. So before I say goodnight, any final words from anybody? Any final?
You want to take your pick for our post?
Yes, we could definitely take a pick. Would everybody who's here and available turn their cameras on?
If you have a camera, turn it on so you can
get a camera, turn it on.
The final picture here.
This is the new way that
we represent.
While we're doing that, a quick shout out. I want to shout out to Patrick Espinosa and his backlot here that I got to shoot it.
Yes.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yes. All right.
Good.
All right, everyone looking at your camera, happy to be here. All right, I have 4 options, so hopefully everyone will look happy.
There we go.
Beautiful.
And thank you again for joining us. Mark, thank you for your planning. Did you have anything last to say?
Nope, I'm got to go to the bathroom.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
All right, on that wonderful note, where would you cut it for YouTube? No. All right. Good night, everybody. I'm going to hit the big button and turn everything off.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Coming.
Take care. Good seeing you all.